Good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Osborne at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm very excited that we are having our second webinar this month for our Early Childhood Scholar Series. It's an opportunity for us to share what's going on across the University of Texas system. There's 14 institutions, both health and academic, and there's so much work that's going on to try and understand how we can improve the lives of young children and their families. And today we are delighted to have folks with us from UT Health Sciences in Houston. And we have folks from the Children's Learning Institute, which if you're not familiar with it, I strongly encourage you to look into it. The Children's Learning Institute, which was founded by Dr. Susan Landry, is really a resource for the state like no other when it comes to helping to improve early education and parenting and other sorts of supports for early childhood. Today, we're joined by Dr. Susan Landry, again, who is the founder of CLI, as well as the two co-directors, April Crawford and Tricia Zucker. And they're going to be talking about impacting early childhood education for Texas schools and families, and really demonstrating how to bridge that research to practice at scale. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Susan Landry, and thank you again for joining us today. Susan, I believe that you're muted there.
Yeah. I want to say hello to everybody that's tuned in for this second webinar in the Early Childhood Scholar Series. Welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. The title of this webinar is Impacting Early Childhood Education for Texas Schools and Families, Research to Practice at Scale. And I want to welcome Drs. April Crawford and Tricia Zucker, who are co-directors of CLI that will be joining me for this webinar. Just to give you a sense of what we'll talk about today and the sequence, we're going to give you a little introduction to Children's Learning Institute in case you're not familiar with the Institute. And then how research informs our programs and resources that we take out across the state and the country. An emphasis on translating research to practice, how we design the research with scale in mind. And then a newer emphasis for us is trying to find effective ways to bring parents and teachers together and with interventions that align the home and classroom that support the child in both environments. And then a description of a wonderful language supplemental program we have called Developing Talkers. And of course, we'll take questions at the end. The Children's Learning Institute is at UT Health, and it is the Texas State Center for Early Childhood Development. Its mission is to advance learning and health outcomes for all children through public-private partnerships in research delivery, development, clinical programs, and service delivery. Our team includes 15 faculty, 60 part-time staff, and 128 full-time staff. Our work is quite broad. This is just a look at a number of the areas that we focus on: brain behavior research, development of parenting interventions, as well as a lot of development of classroom curriculum, professional development, assessments. We have the workforce registry, as well as several clinics and a tutoring program. Our model is quite unique compared to a number of other university-based institutes. We have a research to practice model that we really practice very sincerely and diligently. We start with scientific investigation through funded grants to develop and then test the efficacy of our interventions. To scale our programs out across the state and the country, we work through public and private partnerships, such as Texas Education Agency, the Texas Workforce Commission, and we are able to scale our programs through intense use and really high use of technology integration so that we can customize delivery and have a sophisticated data collection system. Next slide. This is just a little schematic of the theory of an example of a theory of change that we're currently working on in a number of studies that have been recently funded. We have a focus on both supporting the family of children and the teachers and classroom environment. And then in this next slide, you can see that we use coaches as well as school leaders to really support the parents as well as the teachers to learn how children develop, what they need for development, and then use more effective practices. And then in the next slide, thanks. You can see that our coaching support includes a lot of support for teachers around PD courses, child progress monitoring, and attending carefully to standards as well as curriculum. That increases the understanding of children's development as well as the importance of responsiveness. It results in increased efficacy and satisfaction with teaching and changed expectations and beliefs about children's abilities. This results in quality instruction, responsive teaching, and positive teacher-child interactions, which in turn results in children having positive attitudes about school, on-track literacy, math, language, and social emotional development, which finally results in greater learning once children reach kindergarten. And then in the next slide, we have a very similar theory of change that we work with for our parent programs. The parents view sessions that build a repertoire of responsive parenting behaviors, and they see extensive video examples of believable parents using those strategies. There's guided parent self-reflection through the coach-parent relationship and discussion around what the parent wants to develop as their goals. This results in increased understanding of responsiveness, of children's needs, and the role of the parent in helping the child with their needs, as well as expectations and beliefs are improved about children's abilities, leading to responsiveness, rich language input, and positive parent-child interactions. And on the parent side, what we're seeing is greatly improved self-regulated behavior, on track, age-appropriate language and social communication skills, and on track emotional development, which again leads to greater learning and readiness for kindergarten. In this next slide, I am going to introduce you to April Crawford, co-director of CLI, who's going to talk to you about translating research to practice, design with scale in mind. April?
Thank you, Dr. Landry. Next slide. This logic model shows a high-level pathway for moving home and school-focused interventions to scale. Starting on the left, this model begins with research-based intervention frameworks that reflect what theory and research tells us about early childhood development. and the ways early experiences and support in home and school environments can influence child outcomes. So basically, this is that model Dr. Landry just shared. The framework then informs the development of new tools, resources, and data systems that are used to deliver an intervention to families or members of the education workforce. Increasingly, we are working to coordinate efforts across the home and school environments, which you will hear a lot more about from Dr. Landry in a few minutes. Through research and evaluation, we learn more about the extent to which these interventions improve child outcomes. The interventions and findings are then disseminated through communications and outreach. And in a perfect world, the findings, the implementation lessons learned, and interventions themselves are diffused through the system and reflected in policy and social norms. At that point, the research products lead to change and adoption in broad-based initiatives to support the early childhood workforce and families. It's at this point that a research-based intervention is scaled to serve a larger population, usually through partnership and coordination with other organizations and actors in the early childhood system. Scaling can be very difficult to achieve, but if successful, the research-based intervention can improve services and outcomes at a systems level. For the next several minutes, I'm going to share some examples of design strategies that can be incorporated into the research to practice pipeline to improve our chances of moving effective interventions to scale. The timing for these strategies can be really important. Oftentimes, scaling strategies are applied out here after the initial studies have shown positive results. This is challenging and really prevents many programs and interventions from reaching scale, either because the adaptations are too substantial to tackle or too costly to achieve. In our work, we really try to embed scaling strategies much earlier in the process, and often in partnership with organizations and actors that are likely to benefit from the intervention. See, next slide. Before I jump into the scaling strategies, I want to share some of the key barriers to scaling that we've encountered in our work. The first relates to ways in which your intervention supports engagement and learning for participants that differ in characteristics like self-awareness and receptivity to change. Second, when we work with schools in particular, there are often many competing priorities, which can limit bandwidth for your intervention activities. And some schools struggle to establish the kind of culture that really supports teachers and staff to try new things. Third, technology can be a barrier in terms of access, reliability, and people's comfort using technology. Finally, a major barrier to scaling is a lack of alignment between the research framework and the intervention components you develop and the programs within the early childhood system you want to support. If you develop something that works really well, but it does not address an area of practice that is relevant to users, they won't use it. I would like to highlight 4 broad design strategies that we apply in our work that help address these barriers to scaling. First, technology, and in particular, web-based platforms, are a powerful tool for disseminating program content at scale. Second, to the extent possible, interventions should be designed with flexibility in mind. Third, document and clearly articulate the guidance and key fidelity criteria that will be necessary for successful implementation by others outside a research team. Fourth, articulate the underlying strategies and competencies for the intervention and map them onto relevant standards and policies to check for alignment. When you design with these strategies in mind, you are in a better position to partner with other organizations, companies, and public service agencies. In the next few slides, I will briefly share some concrete examples of how we apply the scaling strategies and partner with agencies to bring research to scale. Strategy 1, through a long-standing partnership with the Texas Education Agency and the Texas Workforce Commission, the CLI Engage platform was launched in 2014 to scale and increase the cost effectiveness of our preschool professional development program called Texas School Ready. The platform provides a highly flexible environment that supports rapid development of new tools and resources to support our partners. And the platform is integral to future early childhood research at CLI. I'll take a couple of minutes to introduce the range of tools that are delivered through this technology. CLI Engage houses multiple assessment systems that provide online data collection, reporting, and data-driven recommendations, including free online access to our infant and toddler milestones development checklist, Texas Public Schools Head Start programs, and child care programs that participate in Texas School Ready or Texas Rising Star have no-cost access to comprehensive pre-K progress monitoring. And Texas Public Schools have free access to several additional reliable and valid assessments that support screening and progress monitoring in grades K through 2. We use CLI Engage technology to deliver research-based content to thousands of early childhood education professionals and families each year. The platform contains more than 1,000 courses that include our research-based interventions, our training in early childhood related state guidelines, and early childhood focused career development programs. CLI Engage provides free access to more than 1,700 activities for the classroom and home. These activities are designed for children from birth through 2nd grade. Many of the activities integrate with our progress monitoring tools, and many include full-length annotated demonstrations of effective practice. Finally, Engage delivers school-based family engagement content and family-facing program resources, including the PALS program that Dr. Langry will discuss. CLI Engage is allowing us to scale up delivery of our research-based content in ways that I can't imagine are possible without technology integration. More than 400,000 children are being supported through progress monitoring this year. More than 8,000 schools access our resources in more than 1,300 communities. We've issued more than 15,000 professional development certificates in September, and we have more than 37,000 registered teachers on the platform. Scaling strategy 2 is focused on intervention flexibility. Scaling partners often need flexibility to deliver interventions in ways that fit their staffing model, calendar, and budget. For example, remote coaching has great potential to drive down the cost of providing individualized support by eliminating travel costs. Remote coaching may also increase providers' capacity to deliver services to rural communities. Momentum around personalization and individualized learning are also pushing us toward more flexible interventions. For example, for more flexible sequencing and self-pacing can increase learner autonomy and improve program fit. Next, I'll share a couple of examples of how we systematically incorporate these strategies into our research. Next. Our TSR program has been tested in previous studies using a traditional face-to-face in-classroom coaching model. In this study, we randomly assigned teachers to either a business-as-usual control group that did not receive the intervention, a group supported by our traditional face-to-face coaching model, or a remote coaching group. The remote coaching group relied on teachers' own video recordings of classroom practice. Remote coaches then used the videos to produce annotated feedback videos that were discussed on a coach-teacher call. We observed the quality of teaching practice across several areas of instruction at the beginning and end of the school year. These graphs show the general pattern we found across areas. The blue line is the control group, red is face-to-face, and green is remote coaching. At the beginning of the year, depicted by the dots on the left of the graph, all teachers were performing at similar levels. By the end of the year, depicted by dots on the right in these graphs, teachers in face-to-face and remote coaching made statistically significant and substantial gains in their quality of teaching practices, while control teachers' performance stayed the same. In a few areas of instruction, the gains in the face-to-face group were larger than in the remote group. But in each of these cases, receiving the remote coaching model led to significant improvement compared to control teachers. The next step in our analysis is to better understand if the cost savings associated with remote coaching outweigh the differences in improvement we found between the face-to-face and remote coaching models. In an ongoing study, we are continuing to design and test more flexible implementations of our TSR intervention content. In this study, we moved away from a structured professional development calendar that assumes all teachers need to develop their skills in the exact same areas of practice. We aligned all of our TSR program content with a set of goals, which are like competency statements. At the start of the program, teachers are trained to engage in continuous improvement planning, where they select goal areas they want to work on next, and then receive an automated package of resources that includes TSR online courses, classroom activities to support practice of the goal behaviors. Teachers are trained to end each improvement cycle using a reflection routine designed to increase their awareness of student signals and responses to teaching. Teachers are then also assigned, teachers that are assigned to the CIP intervention are also randomly assigned to participate in the program with the support of a remote coach, or with support from a virtual professional learning community, or without support in a self-paced condition. We still have 3 years of intervention to go in this study, but on this slide, I'm sharing what we're learning about the areas of practice teachers are prioritizing for improvement. Don't worry about reading all the practice areas on the bottom of the chart. I will just share some highlights now. More than half of our teachers, about 40 of them, self-selected to improve their phonological awareness practices. And moving to the right, about half or 20 teachers selected writing-related goals. Moving farther down, only 10 teachers chose to focus on scaffolding strategies, and even fewer, about 8, chose to learn more about integrating data into instruction. We have a long way to go before we know if this model is working well, but at this early stage, it is helping us understand how teachers view their own learning and development needs. The ultimate goal for research-based programs is to be efficiently delivered at a high level of quality by other organizations and partners. Scaling strategy 3 is focused on clearly articulating the essential implementation steps and fidelity criteria that you view as critical for successful implementation, and then include that information in guidance documents, toolkit resources, or even certifications of intervention staff. Through TSR, Texas School Ready, we articulated the coaching behaviors required for high-quality implementation of the coaching component. Those behaviors became the Cli Coaching Competencies, which are content-neutral coaching behaviors that can be applied in different early learning contexts. The competencies fall into competency areas you see here: adult learning theory, characteristics of effective specialists, observation skills, providing feedback, fostering reflective thinking, demonstration and articulation, and continuous improvement. We then created a micro-credentialing system where specialists can earn badges and certifications in the competencies through the submission and rating of their work products. During the rating process, coaches earn badges for each competency demonstrated. Once a coach earns all of the badges in a competency area, they are issued a micro-credential. When every micro-credential is earned, the coach certification is earned. To further support scaling and build capacity in the specialist workforce, the coach micro-credentialing system is being integrated with the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System. We call this platform TechPeds. The platform is a statewide data system that approves high-quality trainers and houses the workforce information of more than 35,000 early childhood teachers and administrators in our state. The final strategy highlights the importance of thinking through and showing how the key components and strategies within your program align to the standards and policies your potential partners are subject to. A great way to apply this strategy is through research practice partnerships. which allow the researcher to really understand what organizations and practitioners want and need in order to improve their work and child outcomes. The TSR program has been scaled in large part through our efforts to show how the program aligns with Texas Education Agency and state standards. For example, the TSR training program satisfies TEA's requirements for a highly qualified pre-kindergarten teacher. Our progress monitoring tool was approved for the TEA's commissioners list, which led to very wide adoption. Our free digital curriculum was accepted by Proclamation 2021 for approved preschool instructional materials, and our content has been translated into CTE lesson plans that support early childhood career pathways in high schools. This final slide brings together all of the scaling strategies into an initiative focused on improving quality and efficiency in the early childhood education system using 3 program and platform inputs that include several of the CLI Engage resources I've described. This includes the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System that houses extensive child care workforce data, and the Texas Rising Star Program, which is our state child care quality rating and improvement system that is administered by the Texas Workforce Commission. Through this initiative, we are integrating and streamlining platform technology and data systems, disseminating evidence-based resources through CLI Engage, and aligning content and tools within CLI Engage and TechPeds to the TRS standards to better support childcare providers in reaching higher levels of quality. The short-term goals for this work are to increase platform utilization and knowledge about child development and outcomes. Further into the implementation, we expect to see increased efficiency and improvements in the quality of care, and ultimately a more skilled workforce and improved child outcomes. If you have any questions about anything I just shared, please just let us know, and we'll be more than happy to follow up. At this point, I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Landry.
Thank you, April. It's a lot of information and all of it very exciting. I'm going to spend a little time describing a research effort, moving back to research, that looked at the benefit of aligning a parent and teacher classroom intervention. In this next slide, we basically use the theory of change I already described to you, where we're looking at how coaches and intervention procedures can support parents, family members, teachers to help children learn and develop at age-appropriate levels. In the next slide, this is just a sample of these are studies that are funded by the Institute of Educational Sciences. In the one I'm going to describe, we had a very large sample of 77 teachers and over 600 families, and we were doing a remote delivery of a classroom and parent intervention. It was a full replication of a previous study that's published in Early Childhood Research Quarterly 2017 that was all face-to-face. So the goal of one of the goals of this study was, could we replicate all aspects of the classroom and parent program in a remote approach? And then just the final study listed there is a study we've now been funded to do where we will replicate in a hybrid version, remote plus face-to-face, for dual language learners and their families. So in the next slide, I'm going to talk about this study that's provided interventions to help parents be responsive, support learning, and there were 2 goals. The first goal was the typical goal of a random assignment experimental study where we evaluated the impact of 2 aligned remote interventions, one in the classroom with teachers, one in the home with parents, on preschoolers' social behavioral skills in Head Start schools. But this study, we wanted to go beyond looking just at main effects of the intervention on change in parent, teacher, child outcomes. And this is rarely done in these types of large intervention studies. But we wanted to go the next step and look at whether the caregiver behaviors, teacher, parent, would come together and into a broader theoretical model to help us understand how parent behaviors and which parent behaviors impacted which child outcomes. In the next slide, we had 2 major theoretical frameworks guiding this study. Bronfenbrenner and Morris's bioecological model of human development, where the alignment between key environments where the child spends a great deal of time, and for us, the classroom and home, when you align what's happening in those classrooms and homes, you get the best outcome for children's learning. The second was Grusick and Davido's domain-specific approaches to socialization. They have demonstrated how adult behaviors or mechanisms, 5 key areas, support children's social behavior and development. And we, in this next part of this slide, focused on 3 of their 5 key areas. Responsiveness, which is a well-known parent and teacher behavior out of the attachment theoretical framework, where an adult needs to attend to a child's signals in a sensitive, prompt manner in ways that are contingent on what the child's signaling they need. The second, from a Vygotskian social cultural framework, guided learning, where the adult matches their input to the child's level of understanding. Some know it as a zone of proximal development, and it helps scaffold the child's understanding of the request or the task. And then finally, organization. The adults in home and classrooms, attention to developing structure, predictability, routines that help the child feel a part or a participant in their classroom and home community. So in this next slide, I'll just quickly go through the components. We refer to this intervention as E-Team in this publication, but it's really Texas School Ready. And it includes extensive professional development that's on the Engage platform, weekly remote coaching, teachers uploading specific instructional activities for the coach to view and then set up a Zoom call to guide the teachers through self-reflection, the use of the circle progress monitoring to inform the teacher's instruction, and a number of supplemental resources, including a classroom curriculum, etc. And then in the next slide, the Play and Learning Strategies, PALS program, has been extensively studied for efficacy. It's in 4 national What Works clearinghouses, including the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Home V set of programs. This includes a large number of online sessions. Each one describes a strategy. And as the sessions go on, the parent is basically developing a repertoire of behaviors, including reading signals, responding to them promptly, using rich language input, etc. These include a very large number of video clips of parents, very believable examples of parents interacting with their children using the strategy of that week. And then the parent, after they viewed that session, they video themselves interacting with their child, trying the strategy of that particular session. They upload the video, then their coach views it and sets up a Zoom call. Very similar to what happens in the remote classroom program. And the coach guides the parent through self-reflection, and parents then discuss what they really want to focus on in the next week. In the next slide, we see the results of the impact phase 1 study, where we just look at main effects. And we saw main effects, significant main effects for teachers in behaviors related to all 3 of the Grusek and Davidow constructs. Sensitivity, guided learning included the language support, book reading practices, organization included developing routines, workstations, centers to support children's learning. The parents also showed a large number of significant improvements in their interactions, including their book reading techniques, their rich language input, their contingent responsiveness to their children's needs. And for both teachers and parents, all the effect sizes were moderate to large. Quite impressive. Next slide. So in this next slide, you see that we tested main effects. So right now we've seen how the intervention impacted teachers, how it impacted parents, and now how it impacts the child. But they're all looked at in isolation. But across a multi-method approach, we see changes in the child's observed behaviors in interactions with their parents, use of more complex language, their goal-directed play. We see it in direct measures of executive function and self-regulation on well-known tasks like the bear dragon or the gift wrap task, and then on several questionnaires and ratings that parents and teachers did that look at attention and other behaviors such as impulsivity, anxiety, etc. So at this point, we know how EPALS and E-Team affect teachers, parents, children, but they're all in isolation of each other. So let's go to the next part of this study. The phase 2 mechanistic questions. To determine if our behaviors that we observe for parents and teachers actually fit into the Grusek 3 key behaviors, we did confirmatory factor analysis as well as literature searches, etc. And they do, in fact, based on effect sizes, fit into these 3 separate constructs: parent responsiveness and teacher sensitivity. Guided learning, parents, mostly it was related to their language building behaviors, their scaffolding of labeling and word meanings, and the teachers building a strong language environment in the classroom and having very effective book reading techniques. And then for the teacher, but not the parent, we see a construct through the factor analysis of organization. So in this next set of slides, I'm going to show you some models. This is the responsiveness mediation model. Remember, we saw that parents' increases in responsiveness and teachers' increases both fit in the factor analysis into these constructs. And this shows you that the EPALS, the actual intervention, fully explained the increase in parents' responsivity. And E-Team explained teachers' increases in responsivity. But then, and I hope you can see this far right side of the slide because I can't, but I think I remember what it says. Everybody's faces are covering up this right side. For responsiveness, the parents' responsiveness increases fully explain the effect of the intervention on a very large number of behaviors. And the teachers on less, but a number of very important ones. Just to highlight a couple, parent report of self-regulation, the child's goal-directed play, which is an important self-regulation and executive function behavior. Also, the executive function direct measure, the bear dragon, and then teacher responsivity, interestingly, explains the effect of the intervention on children's decreases in anxiety and school avoidance. And then in this next slide, which shows you the guided learning model, again, the intervention predicts the parents' increases in guided learning as well as the teachers. But while they explain the intervention effect on a number of child outcomes, some of those are different from responsiveness. But we see again, goal-directed play, social skills, decreased anxiety, and strong trends from the teacher to decrease anger and aggression. So it's a broad range of positive and decreases in negative social behavioral skills coming from both the parents and the teachers. And in this final model, where we're looking at the teacher's organization, because we did not have a construct for parent organization, we see an extensive number of child behaviors that are fully mediated by how the teacher organizes the classrooms, sets up predictable routines, and nice engaging areas for children to learn. Where we see a new finding is emotion understanding, which I think is quite interesting because I don't think we usually think of teachers' effective use of organization practices as affecting things like emotion understanding, as well as decreased anxiety and anger aggression. So in summary, in this next slide, we basically find from this phase 2 component that there are patterns of association between the associations of E-Team, EPALS with the parent and teacher's growth or improvement in a broad range of key skills that in turn mediate the effect of the intervention on improvement in children's skills. And in many cases, these patterns of associations are different. For teachers, organization was one of the strongest set of behaviors mediating child skills, whereas for parents, responsiveness was. Improvement in parent behaviors was only associated with positive social behavioral outcomes, whereas for teachers, it was associated with positive, but also reduction in a number of negative social, emotional, behavioral outcomes. So we have quite a bit of information from this study to inform our future development of interventions and resources for teachers and families across the state. I'm going to now turn the program over to Dr. Zucker.
Hello, and can you all hear me? Great. My name is Tricia Zucker, and I'm going to tell you a little bit today about a program called Developing Talkers that also is an example of moving a program that we developed and tested at the Children's Learning Institute to scale. I'm also going to explain how this relates to the past study that Susan Landry just spoke to you about. Specifically, we focused on making sure teachers were organized in their language arts instructional block, and we made sure that they had a supplemental curriculum in place called Developing Talkers to guide children's learning. So on the next slide, I'm going to explain to you a little bit more of why we began studying this program. You may know that we have a real problem with reading comprehension skills in our country. 65% of fourth graders across our country cannot read proficiently. This means they cannot make the complex inferences or derive complex understanding from text that's necessary to be competitive for today's careers. and for future careers and college readiness. Therefore, you might wonder, how do you work toward addressing this major reading problem? Well, there's at least 3 things you need to do. In the earliest grades, work on evidence-based phonics instruction that follows the science of reading. Second, make sure children have a very strong vocabulary and background knowledge. And third, make sure that you teach them how to comprehend sophisticated oral language. It is these types of things, both learning to decode words and learning to comprehend language, that support later reading. Within the Texas School Ready preschool program, we have been historically very effective at improving early code-related skills that set children up for the decoding side of reading. But about 10 years ago, I walked into Susan Landry's office and she was looking at graphs of data across the state and was quite troubled that although we were moving low-income children's decoding and early reading skills quite well across the school year, the Texas School Ready program and many others were not successfully improving children's vocabulary skills. Likewise, we observed in other observational research that I conducted through the Department of Education's research funding program, that teachers do not ask sophisticated questions during the language arts time. Specifically, we've coded more than 5,000 teacher questions that were asked to their early childhood students during book reading. And what we found was troubling. Most of the questions teachers asked could be answered with a simple yes or no response, rather than a more elaborate response, multi-word utterance, which preschool and kindergarten children are quite capable of. We also found that only 6% of teachers' questions really elicited what we call deep explanations by asking children to compare why, think about how things happen, or explain just their reasoning. So with that in mind, our goal was to develop a solution to these problems. Not only in Texas, but for the whole country, our goal is to build the vocabulary and comprehension skills needed in early childhood to become a later successful reader. So on the next slide, I will show you a little bit more about our approach. Again, this is a program called Developing Talkers that we developed through the data I just described to you that showed teachers needed more supports and ways to get organized around providing excellent vocabulary and comprehension instruction in the earliest grades. You can see that this is a program that relies on books, high quality books that teachers share with their class in whole group read-alouds. It also is unique in that we focus on deep explanation questions, what we call guiding questions, both before, during, and after reading. And we explicitly teach children academic vocabulary. These are the kind of words that sophisticated language users might use in a presentation like this, or they might see when they're reading the newspaper. But these go beyond the types of words that are typically used in everyday conversation because they are academic in nature. The good thing about the Developing Talkers program is that we designed it to only take about 20 minutes per day. This would ensure scalability and alignment with teachers' schedules. On the next slide, I'll show you a few other features of the Developing Talkers program that teachers told us are part of what makes it really effective. It's what we call a multi-tiered system of support. This means that there are some components that are given to all students. These universal components like book reading are called Tier 1 instruction. Everyone receives this. But for kids who we are worried about their initial language skills being a little bit weak relative to their peers, they receive extra small group instruction. That's what we call Tier 2, a targeted daily set of activities to build language skills. On the next slide, excuse me, I'll just briefly tell you that this also follows the CLI, the Children's Learning Institute model for scaling up our programs. We make sure that we always begin with strong research evidence. We have now conducted 2 randomized control trials of the Developing Talkers program with over 1,000 children in English and with over 167 children who speak Spanish using the Spanish version of the program called Hablemos Juntos. As you can see on the right, data from these studies show that children have great success in learning these sophisticated vocabulary words. So at the far left side, the light green bar is the control group. These are how many academic words preschool and kindergarten children know without support. And what you will see in the next bar, the Developing Talkers group knows significantly more academic words when they have been exposed to this high quality program that guides learning and organizes teachers' instruction. On the far right, the second graph shows you specifically what happens when you assess children on untaught vocabulary words, words that no one has been exposed to through explicit instruction, like the vocabulary cards you saw on the slide before. In this slide, you see that there are no group differences between the control group and the Developing Talkers group. And this demonstrates how important it is for teachers to guide learning through explicit vocabulary instruction. Children cannot infer what academic words mean without an adult who explains what those words mean in a very child-friendly way. Likewise, children cannot learn to answer the type of deep explanation questions that will be coming in later reading achievement tests if they don't start early to have those sorts of conversations in early childhood. Therefore, we're conducting a third study at the moment, and it is called the Developing Talkers Efficacy Trial. We're recruiting schools right now where we will examine not only how this program impacts kids, but how it supports teachers to learn to better scaffold and guide learning for all types of children. So finally, I'll wrap things up for all three of our presentations today on this final slide that it shows you a little bit more of that theory of change that Dr. Landry alluded to in the very first parts of the conversation. Well, what we want to illustrate here is that our work is not done. We have future plans to expand this theory of change to look at how we can better partner with pediatric providers and informal science experts, and as well as coaches and teachers to produce even stronger outcomes for younger learners and bilingual learners. So with that, I'm going to drink some water and turn it over.
So we have a number of questions in our question box. One person is asking, could we share what actions we're taking at CLI to deal with the huge dropout attendance of children due to COVID? I can't say that we're directly working on the dropout, but we are indirectly trying to support schools, teachers, and families with a large set of resources that Dr. Crawford could also speak to, that are online, that support children's learning and teachers and families' ability to work with their children with engaging learning activities. So we've been very involved in that effort, and it's been responded to by thousands, actually, of teachers and families. Dr. Crawford, do you want to add to that?
I agree. I think what we've really been trying to do, and what we've been, has been really interesting to see, is how actively schools are really still trying to engage with families, especially in childcare. Those families that were formerly enrolled in care and are not now, they're really working to still support children while they're at home. So while we're not directly addressing enrollment levels, we are providing a lot of resources and support to help them continue to engage.
And then we have a question, how long does it take a trainer to review a video? I think they mean a coach, to review a video and provide feedback to either a parent or a teacher. In the PALS, the parents are asked to do about 10 minutes of videoing themselves with their child. And so it takes the coach 10 minutes basically, but then they're also maybe reviewing parts of it to take notes before they set up the call with their parent that they're coaching. And a similar approach happens in Texas School Ready with remote coaching and teachers uploading a specific instructional activity. April, anything you want to add to that?
Just that on the classroom side, we often try to pace these interventions so that there is sort of a 2-week coaching cycle. So in 1 week, the teacher is practicing new strategies in the classroom and recording their practices, uploading it to the coach, and then the coach returns a session feedback video and has a call the following week. So that's kind of a typical pattern for the classroom intervention pace.
Thanks. And then someone is asking how the parent and teacher interventions align with Frog Street curriculum, endorsed by Texas Rising Star. They align quite well. We have done the Texas School Ready program in many, many classrooms using Frog Street. And they're very complementary. As the Texas School Ready and PALS interventions are with other curriculums. So that's always been a goal, to not try to replace commercial curriculums that classrooms and school districts and Head Starts use, but to supplement and enhance their effectiveness. And then, is ePALS available to any parent for free? We do have what we call PALS spotlights on Engage, but it doesn't come with the coach, and it's not a complete program. So the answer to this is no, it's not free to any parent. We are trying to find effective ways to bring it to a much larger scale in more cost-effective ways, and that one of our goals is to have it in well child visits and pediatric clinic visits. That's a future goal that we're working towards. It is part of the Home V approved parent interventions, and Texas could draw funds down for ePALS or PALS like they do for some of the other programs, HIPPY, Nurse Family Partnership. It's in the list of approved programs with those other interventions, but at this point, Texas has not chosen to draw down funds for ePALS or PALS specifically. And then we have a question, is there a paper, a published paper on the mechanism study that I described? And I will say that in the next month, it will be under review. And so we will ultimately have a paper, but at this point, the impact study is in press. It's been reviewed and approved for Early Childhood Research Quarterly. It's not out yet. And the mechanism paper will be sent in for review in the next number of weeks. And let's see, we have a few more questions. What is the demographic makeup of parents, children, teachers in the study I described, the EPAT? Were there any challenges parents presented to videotaping themselves? How much time would a parent need to dedicate weekly? Yes, we did have challenges. Any technology approach will have challenges. We did provide the parents with a netbook on loan that was set up with a camera. So if they did not have internet or a strong internet connection, we provided that also. So that gives you a sense of some of the challenges. And parents needed to hopefully dedicate 24/7, except maybe when they're sleeping, time to PALS, because we're hoping they'll do it with their children at mealtime, when they're dressing, bathing, traveling to their classroom. But structured time, the sessions to view them and upload a video, maybe an hour and a half a week. And then the coach call, another 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, it's great that you have such a large team at CLI. I'm curious if you have advice or recommendations for capacity building and growing the team of people you need to do this type of work.
Susan, I'm going to break in for just a second. My apologies is that we're at 1. And so I wanted to just recognize that if you'd like to keep going and to stay on and address these questions, we can definitely keep that going. For those who have to leave at 1, I just wanted to thank them for coming and to invite them to come back again and join us on February 16th for our next Early Childhood Scholar Series for UT System. And I wanted to just have the opportunity to thank the 3 of you for this really wonderful presentation about all the different efforts that you're leading and how it can affect so many families with just rigorous research that we can actually use to improve the well-being of children and parents. So thank you all very much. I'm going to pause here for a second if anyone needs to break off, but then allow you, Susan, if you'd like to continue to answer any of the questions that folks have, because I know folks had a lot of them. But
Yeah,
thank you.
there are a lot of questions that we probably won't get to all of them, but please send your questions to us in an email, and we will respond to all of them. April, do you want to talk about how you build capacity?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the most important things to do is to really value very diverse skill sets. You know, the reason why we're able to achieve what we have is because we have staff on our team that are highly technical in nature, people that are very data focused, members that are very skilled content writers, skilled interventionists, researchers with diverse interests in policy, intervention, and basic research in child development. So I really think like the single most important strategy is make sure you're building a team where the skill sets are very diverse.
Okay, and then Tricia, people are wanting to know how they can get the books, and can you do developing talkers with infants?
Well, so you can get the Developing Talkers program now through Scholastic. We have licensed the Developing Talkers program exclusively to Scholastic Inc. And that is one of our additional levers for scaling up this work that I was coughing too much to fully explain during my talk. But their new pre-K program is called Pre-K on My Way. Language module is all Developing Talkers. So you can purchase it directly from Scholastic. I would not recommend the specific Developing Talkers program for infants. Why? Because it focuses on academic vocabulary. Those are words that are not appropriate to be teaching to infants and toddlers. Those kids need to be learning more basic words at those ages. So we do have other curricula that are designed around shared book reading with before, during, and after strategies that are more appropriate for those younger ages. So I'm happy to send you more information about that directly.
Thanks, Tricia. Someone wants to know the name of the study that's in the 2017 Early Childhood Research Quarterly, and it's called Improving School Readiness of High-Risk Preschoolers, Combining High-Quality Instructional Strategies with Responsive Training for Teachers and Parents. It's Early Childhood Research Quarterly, Volume 40, page 38. Let's see, what else do we have? A comment, not a question. This person feels that all of what was shared today would have made a significant impact on her when she was beginning to teach in the 70s. It's all critical data and research for teacher practices. Thank you very much. And do you have any thoughts as to why the organizational behaviors of teachers made a significant difference with the children, as opposed to other teacher behaviors? Well, I do want to point out that responsiveness and guided learning explain child increases in a number of social and behavioral skills for teachers. But organization was really the key construct that explained the largest number of child increases. And I think it's because at this young age, children really respond to predictability. Remember, this organizational behavior helped decrease significant decreases in anxiety, anger, aggression, school avoidance. So when children come into a classroom where the teacher has these engaging workstations and learning centers, and the children know that they start the morning with a song, a dance, and they can look forward to that, and they have their circle time. The room and the environment feels like it's theirs, and they own it, and they feel comfortable, and really it also predicted school liking. So I think these are very important behaviors to emphasize in professional development with teachers, particularly in these very young ages. And then finally, we have a comment. Thank you very much for the resources you presented. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We've had a great time sharing everything with you and look forward to more contact with you. And if there are other questions, please email us. Again, thank you so much.